This is the story of how I met my husband, Sean.
I didn't mean to get married.
He was not my husband when I first met him. Things later transpired.
I'd been on OkCupid for probably too long because OkCupid had started to run out of women in the Atlanta area. They had started to suggest women who were in Tennessee and South Carolina and North Carolina.
So I had joined the dating site OkCupid kind of on a whim, just like, oh, let's see what happens. And there were some messages and things, and one of them was from this guy. He was really funny, and his message was super short. He was just like, hey.
For the most part, I wasn't going to try to get into these relationships or fall in love, any of that. I was just going to date. I was going to find people that I liked, and we were going to enjoy ourselves.
His profile page was real long, and it was all bullet points, which I very much appreciated. And one of those that was really important for him, apparently, was must not like Adam Sandler.
And one day I was on OkCupid, which is where I met a lot of the women I dated.
He was like, hey, back, and here's my number. And so I decided to call him.
And she did. And I was trying to be sort of clever and witty and the things that were sort of in my favor. I know how to talk. I like the sound of my own voice.
So I called him about the day before Thanksgiving, I think. And I think this might have been the first or second time I had ever made cranberry sauce before. And so I was doing this over like 2 hours when I decided in the middle of it that I would call this guy. And he was really personable and really easy to talk to. And he was kind of a badass. You know, he was a writer, which is so cool. Like, I love that. And he kind of asked me if I had looked him up before I called him, like on the internet, like if I looked him up. And I was like, no, I trust my own judgment. If you're creepy, I'll know, you know. And he was a little crestfallen. He was kind of like, oh, okay. Well, and I realized later that he had put his number of Twitter followers on his profile pic.
That picture of hers really had me smitten.
And so the next day I headed down to Tallahassee.
Sort of planning to meet after Thanksgiving because she had gone away to see her family for Thanksgiving. And
my brother was making bacon maple cupcakes.
Made some promises about cupcakes that remain unfulfilled to this day.
And I had kind of talked to Sean. I was like, well, you know, I'll bring you some back. But they weren't that good, to be honest. And I felt a little weird about like bringing back bad cupcakes, even though I didn't make them. So I didn't bring the cupcakes back. To this day, I have not lived that down.
One of the things I really liked in our first interactions, even before this first date, was that she was too busy to meet me. And a lot of the people I'd met that were like, oh, I need you to make my world. We're going to spend every minute together. I don't have a life now, and I want you to become my world. And that is the last thing I needed.
We made plans to meet. I generally had a really busy schedule at that time. So we decided that we would get together and go on a date on the 30th of November.
On November 30th, 2011, we had this first date.
And I had my cutest shirt on. I looked very good. I was like working it.
So she was there, came over and gave me a big warm hug, which, you know, just delighted me.
So I was sitting there kind of waiting for Sean, and I remember I hugged him when we first met. And I remember feeling kind of enveloped by him. And that was a really cool feeling.
Yeah. You know, sometimes people were kind of standoffish, and there was that moment on a date where I'm a big guy. I've been a big guy my whole life. And so sometimes I could read on their faces immediately like, oh, your pictures didn't look this big. And I could see them doing the calculus of how long do I have to stay on the date before I get to go home? And I didn't see that on her face at all. And that really warmed my heart.
Meeting somebody who was like, who kind of towered above me, and who, when he hugged me, I felt like warm and safe and held. It was just this really great feeling.
So we sat down and ordered some food and started chitting and chatting. And I was trying to put my best foot forward with the things I'd done, but I was trying to do it in sort of this clever way of, oh, what do you do? So I could then answer her with, I have this many Twitter followers. I've done this. I was whatever the case may be.
So I don't know how first dates go for everybody else, but I think for me, I wanted to put my best face and my best foot forward, I'm not the kind of person that's going to lie about my past or anything, but I do want to I want to tell the best side of myself. I want to be my best self with anyone that I'm with, to the best of my ability.
She kept on coming back with this high school she went to, which was very prestigious, and she had invented a way to solve a geometry problem. I don't know. I should know math better than I do, but the fact that she was really smart and really pretty much a math nerd was exciting to me.
So he was a writer, which is very cool. He was like a published writer. It was very badass of him. And meanwhile, I was working, I sort of fell into this job. I had started working as a temp, and then I was working at Saia, this trucking company, and payroll. But that wasn't necessarily a career for me. And so I remember talking probably too much about past accomplishments. I'm a writer too, and I had self-published books of poetry. I had written short stories and plays, and so I remember kind of oh, you did this? Well, I did this, and you did this other thing. Well, I did something too, and I'm a singer, and he plays guitar, and he used to be a busker, which is really cool. And I just remember thinking that he's lived this really cool life,
And so the night just went like that. Just in a moment, they were already shutting down the restaurant, sort of giving us hints that they were closing.
So we finished the evening. We kind of talked the restaurant closed.
So at the end of the date, I asked her, so how do you think it went?
And then he asked me what I thought about the date, and he asked me if I liked him. It was a very disconcerting feeling. I don't think I've ever been on a date that was like that. But it was kind of nice, actually. I was able to kind of say, well, yeah, I would go out with you again. I think this went well. I enjoyed talking to you. And he said similar complimentary things about me, which was very cool.
And so we walked outside slowly, sort of meandering to my car. And I'm really nervous because this is the moment where I want to kind of get my good night kiss and, maybe not end the night, to be honest with you.
And he walked me out. We walked out to the parking lot, and I kissed him goodnight.
So I leaned up against the car, and then she leaned in and gave me just a little peck on the lips, which was sweet and nice.
I kissed him goodnight. It was like a little mwah.
But I was sort of trying to persuade her for more of a kiss. And I said, oh, can I have another one?
And then I was like, I gotta go. And I think it took him by surprise because he's like, well, can I have another kiss? And so I kissed him again,
I remember sort of grabbing her, putting my hands on just the top part of her hips and sort of pulling her in a little. And she came in, we had a nice little kiss. And then, I'm trying to be all charming and, oh, how are you doing? And she just sort of looked at me and went, I gotta go.
So I kissed him, but I didn't make out with him. And I kissed him again, but after that I had to leave. And I said, bye. And I got in my car and I left.
And she went. She left skid marks towards her car, got in the car and was gone. She like Kaiser Sosa'd my life. It's like Well, I thought it was going, what just happened?
I got out of there, and I remember I called a friend of mine, and she said, so, like you do, how did it go? And I said, it was really good.
And I really thought I had done something wrong. I really thought that, I must not be a good kisser. But there was this moment, and then she was gone, and I was like, oh no.
I remember I called him the next day, and we talked, and he was like, I didn't think you were going to call me, and you just like sped out of there like a bat out of hell. And I was like, well, that's just, when it's leaving time, it's time to leave. Like, that's how I feel. That's just me. And he got used to it,
So that first date really hinted at the magic that this relationship was going to be. We've been married for over 2.5 years now. We've traveled the world together. We bought a home in the place I want to be more than any in the world. And it's just the best thing that's ever happened to me.
I didn't know when I met my husband that he was going to be my husband. But these are the earrings that I wore at our wedding. And we've been around the world together. And I can't imagine my life without him now.
That's how I accidentally got married.